When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl, just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Everybody, welcome to Hey Girl. I'm your girl, Kim with an E, and this is episode 71. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, I want to let you know that Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experiences and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation, because knowing you're not alone is what helps you get through. Well, if you're here, come on in the room. Say hello in the comments. I'm so glad you have joined us. We have a great show in store for you. As you probably know, this is the last of our four-part series this month that we've been doing on the theme of going back to school. If you are here, be sure to share this live, like the page, follow the page, because we're going to get into a whole new theme next month. But we're ending it with a bang. We have two great guests that I'm going to introduce you to today. But I want to first know how everyone is doing. This theme this month has been going back. And I know we all have had to go back in one way or another at different times, but I'm assuming by now most everyone is kind of back, whatever that looks like for you. So tell me in the comments how it's been. Are you into a rhythm yet? Are you feeling like you kind of know how this is going to be? Or is it a little rough? Is it a little rough right now? I understand if it is. Of course, we are in very strange times. I must say that we are now fully back. When I say we, both of my children are in school and I'm back to work, although we haven't gone face to face yet. I work at a university. And I must say, it's been a little interesting, the going back. How about you guys? What has happened as you've gone back that may or may not be the same? It's so interesting because we're, 3 weeks in, and last week, both of my daughters got sent home because there was a COVID scare. This is the world we live in, apparently, the new norm. And so, yeah, that's been interesting. And I guess indicative of this, you know, the environment that we're in. And even though we're trying to go back and trying to get back to what we have always done, it's just not quite the same. And then we talked last week about the fact that even as the girls are there and back, it's still, there's things in place that make it different. They have to stay kind of apart from their friends. They're wearing the mask. Just it's just been different. And so I imagine that you all can probably relate, and maybe it's been hard. Tell me in the comments what it has been like for you. What has been the hardest part about going back? Let me know in the comments. Um, I want to also remind you of the resources that we have made available to you. We've had some great guests on. Jana Peterson was one who was with us at the beginning of the month, and we have the resources that she shared with us on the Facebook page. If you go to the photo album, there were some great graphics that she provided us for parents and for children, particularly for the children, that I think are really nice. And you may want to share if you have children or no children who are struggling with the current circumstances or state of things in their school and maybe not sure how to manage the emotions. And then, of course, we also have resources on justkim.net that we'd love for you to check out. One that I have mentioned before is the How to Cope with Disappointment handout. It's a downloadable 3 ways to deal with disappointment. You may want to check that out as well. And I don't want you to forget, of course, I mention it every week, that we are always looking for small businesses to support and promote. So also on the justkim.net page is our Hey Girl High Five. And that is our list of small businesses, minority businesses, women-owned businesses that are doing good work, selling various products that you would probably be interested in. And so we definitely invite you to check them out. And if you are a small business owner or know someone who is, we'd love for you to email us at heygirlfb@gmail.com, and let's put that name of that business on our Hey Girl high five. Now, I want to get into what we have for today, but in addition to all the stuff that we are dealing with as we are going back to school, I think what's compounding it as well is all the things that are going on in the world, right? Like, can we talk about Afghanistan and Haiti, and never mind the UN report about climate change? You know what I mean? So it's like, if in your personal life you're stressed, then you listen to the news, you're probably going to be stressed all over again. It's just a lot. I don't know if it's been overwhelming for any of you. And I know it has for me. I've actually had to take a couple of days off from listening to the news just to kind of let my mind rest. And last week we had Marissa Leslie here, and she mentioned, and we didn't get to it on the show, so I wanted to circle back. She mentioned that she supports UNICEF USA, which is doing a work in the world to relieve some of these crises that we are currently seeing, whether it's Haiti or Syria, and there's so many other countries that they are providing food for, and disaster relief and all kinds of things. And I don't know about you, but that comforts me, because I sometimes feel like such a small person. Like, what can I do for all the problems in the world? How can I contribute in some way? Or what could I contribute? What could I do? Yet we hear about all these horrible things that are happening, and you feel like you should do something. Like, how guilty do you feel sitting down at your dinner table with a mound of food to eat that you can't even finish, and there's people across the country who are wondering where their next meal is coming from? So Dr. Leslie mentioned it last week, that she supports UNICEF, and I thought it would be a really good idea to put organizations like this out front, and for us to remember that there is some small thing that we can do to help the worldwide effort in relieving the stress. We think we're stressed in our lives, in our day-to-day, but imagine what some of these others are having to deal with. So let's do our part. All right, I've been rambling on and on. Is there anyone here? Say hello to me. I don't see anybody in the comments yet, but I'm trusting that you're here, and I just want you to say hello when you do pop on, and let me know how going back has been for you and how you're managing. So I mentioned that I have two special guests on today that I want to introduce you to. And they are here to talk about this school environment that we may be in ourselves, or we may have children who are trying to navigate the academic space in this post or semi-post COVID world. And I thought these two individuals would be perfect to have this conversation for those of you who have children yourself, or maybe you yourself are a student. And the first guest is Summer Wood. She is a principal at F.H. Jenkins Preparatory School in Nashville, Tennessee. She has been an educator for over 10 years, having worked in both the public and private sectors. Over the course of her career, she has worked as an elementary teacher, high school teacher, instructional coach, principal, community and diversity specialist, and consultant. She is a graduate of Oakwood University, Johns Hopkins University, and Vanderbilt University. And then my college roommate, Melanie Williams, is a native of Charlotte, North Carolina, and says she knew at an early age that she wanted to be a social worker. Melanie has a bachelor's degree in social work from Oakwood College, now University, and a master's degree in social work from Alabama A&M University with a concentration in family and child welfare. Melanie has spent most of her professional career as a social worker with Charlotte Mecklenburg School in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this past year was nominated School Social Worker of the Year, and I think she should be applauded for that. In her spare time, Melanie also works at Roof Above, an organization that works to decrease homelessness and helps families secure affordable housing. Please welcome, if you would, my guests, Summer Wood and Melanie Williams. Welcome, ladies. Hey, girl.
Hello.
Hey. I'm so glad to have both of you here. Welcome, welcome. So I invited you here, of course, because you have something in common, right? You're both in the school system. You're in the trenches. We were talking before the show about the work that you all are doing, the service that you're offering, and I think it's one of those often overlooked arenas. We don't give enough credit. Although I must say that parents probably had a new appreciation for those of you who work in schools when we went into the shutdown. They were all like, oh, please let me send them back. We love the teachers, we love the administrators. But you all have in common that you're in the trenches with those kids, and but yet you have you're in different roles. And so I wanted to talk about how your different roles in the school system, what effect that is, how that works with what you do, and how what we might need to know about what you do that we perhaps don't already. So, and we all, I think, assume that we know what a principal does, but I don't know if we really do. I don't know. We just expect the principal to just be there when we need him or her to be there. But Summer, talk about what you do. Obviously, you're a principal, but what is your day to day? What does it look like? A typical day. Now we're talking pre-COVID. Talk
Yes.
pre-COVID first. then we'll get into, because COVID has changed everything. But pre-COVID, what would you say a typical day in the life of a principal is or looks like?
The interesting thing about that question is that there probably is not a typical day in the life of a principal. It is such a on-demand job. So when I think about the work that I do, I have to be able to balance, and principals have to be able to balance the vision of the school, like where do we want to go, while at the same time maintaining the day-to-day. So that could be anything from a student needs a pep talk, right? Like teachers will say XYZ student needs to hear from you, right? And I feel like that is important in my role, and not even disciplinary wise, but it really is they may be in a slump today academically, and we have built relationships. And that's another part of my role as leader, is to ensure that we're developing a school-wide culture and encouraging teachers to make sure that we have healthy classroom cultures, right? So it could be those one-on-one conversations with students. It's helping teachers with lessons and helping them think through the instructional piece. It is discipline. It is when you work at a private school, you're also like CEO. So you're thinking about the business of school, right? Recruitment, enrollment. So it in essence is like running a small business, and you're working with parents, you're working with kids, you're in the classroom. I read to the kids because I don't get in classrooms as much as I would like to, but I always want to feel connected to them in their space, in their classroom space. So me going into the room and just spending time with them, reading with them, etc., so that they know who I am as well, and supporting my teachers emotionally as well as instructionally. I mean, there's a lot. And then planning for the future, right? So where do we want to go as an institution? So it's a lot of juggling. I don't think there is a typical day. But it's a day that's rested and grounded in certain principles, which is like relationship building, managing employees, and making sure that we're building towards our future.
Oh, wow. That's well said. And yeah, I never thought of your job as being like managing a business, but I definitely see how that is true. Managing people, trying to meet needs, trying to fulfill the vision and mission of the institution. All right. So Mel, same question. What is a day in the life of a social worker, a school social worker? Uh-oh, you're muted.
Every day is different. I can tell you that. Every day is different. One thing that I say about being a school social worker is that you kind of never plan your day, because it's never going to go as planned. But I spend my day building relationships, being in classrooms. This was pre-COVID now. Doing some individual counseling. It was was normal before pre-COVID. I got to see my kids every day. I got to interact with my families, got to interact with my coworkers. As most of you know, social work is a lot of interaction. So that was one reason why I got into it, because I like the interaction and building relationship parts. So when it came to COVID, it really, really kind of threw me for a loop, because we can't really do social work virtually. So the last year and a half have been very stressful for me. Not, because of something going on in my life. It's because I haven't been able to connect with my kids. The things that a social worker needs to see, they can't see virtually. And I was limited, and that really put me in a funk. So I am so excited to be back at school with my babies. I call them my babies. And I'm ready and excited to see what the next couple of months bring, as far as building more relationships and interacting with my families this year.
So I want to back up. So Summer, you're at a preparatory school. So that's what, K-8?
We actually go to 10th.
Okay, 10th. And then Mel, what
Middle school,
age group are
6th,
you?
7th, and 8th.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I definitely get the impact that you both talked about, relationship building, and I definitely get the impact that COVID must have had on that. But before we even talk about that, again, pre-COVID, what would you say, you each described your roles and in your positions, what would you say pre-COVID were the biggest challenges that you dealt with?
For me, homelessness. The school that I work at is a low poverty school, and the area that I work in has quite a bit of hotels. So I really had to think out the box when I was dealing with those students who were in transition, because not only were they bringing the stress of being in transition, but most of them were behind academically. So trying to be a source of resource for my homeless population kids. I don't like to call them homeless. I call them my babies. But that was a real, that was a real big issue for me, is making sure that they were included.
What percentage, did you say, would you say of the children that you work with fall into that homeless category?
Well, we started school on Wednesday, and I left school yesterday, and we had 20 kids in hotels.
Wow.
20 kids. And we just started school Wednesday. So I'm expecting Monday to be kind of, busy one as far as getting kids in school.
Yeah. So that's now, but previous to the current circumstances, is that typical, or is that more than usual?
It's more than usual, but it's typical. Like I said, the area that I live in caters toward those hotels that sell rooms by the night or by the week. And those are hotels that parents can afford because they've been evicted. They have, evictions on their file. So pretty much hotel life is all they can afford right now. And although when you break down the money, they're spending almost $1,400 a month. And some of them can afford housing, but because of their background, criminal or, eviction, it keeps them in a hotel. So homelessness would always be my number one, before COVID and after COVID.
Wow. Yeah, I could definitely see how COVID could even compound that more. What about you, Summer? What was the biggest challenge that you dealt with prior to COVID?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that, because as you asked that question, I kind of got deer in headlights, because I can't even, at this point, I can't even remember the challenges that I was having prior to COVID. I think at that, prior to this pandemic, it was the quote unquote normal stressors that you may have, dealing with a particular situation that might be sensitive with a family or a student, things of that nature can be a bit stressful. Challenges as it relates to resources, right? No school ever has enough resources. So how are we going to carry out the vision without all the things? It's as a principal, one thing I didn't mention in what I do, but you're the facilities manager too. So when a roof leaks, one, where's the money coming from? And two, we got to get it fixed, all of those things. So it was, I think for me prior to, I don't know if I could put my finger on, oh, this is the biggest challenge, but it was the challenge of the job, right? Like resources, relational, all those things that come when you are leading out. Yes, at those points, they feel overwhelming. But now that I've been in this, take me back there. I'll take that.
Right. That's why I was specifically wanting to know pre-COVID versus post-COVID because COVID has changed everything.
Everything.
And so what impact then? Okay, so what are the biggest challenges now? And like you said, you wish for the problems you had before. So what do the problems look like now?
So it is the constant state of uncertainty that leads to increased stress. So I'm a planner by nature, these are the things that we need to do to execute, we get it done. In COVID, you can plan day by day. And then you also have to have a contingency plan for just in case X, Y, Z. And so I think for me, teachers, students, and parents, that has been, I think we are underestimating the level of stress that has had on us. I remember speaking with my teachers last year where it felt like, okay, we just have to do this for this amount of time and then and then like you're constantly looking for that time when we'll be normal again. Yeah. But it's not coming. I mean, it's not anytime soon. And so you begin to realize the weight that this is having on you. And so, there are specific things like teaching on Zoom all day, fatigue, specific things like, oh no, if there's a COVID case in the building, stress. But I think the undercurrent of uncertainty and the stress that has is probably the even bigger challenge than the little things that we're having. They're not little, but the individual things that we're having to deal with.
What about you, Mel? You said it was just since Wednesday, so I guess it's still a little early.
No, I agree with Summer, the uncertainty. The kids, you don't sense they have it from them because they're just excited to be at school. But, the teachers are kind of on edge because our numbers are steady creeping. And like Friday, 3-4 football games had to be canceled because of COVID. And so, I don't want to say it, but I'm just kind of waiting for the ball to drop again out of, because it's just like it's coming. And I'm preparing myself mentally because like I said, it's hard to do social work virtually. And in my mind, I'm already planning how I'm going to do it differently this year if it does. But the uncertainty of, if I'll get to see my kids the next day, because, it could be something. And then it was like, bam. I don't see them anymore. So the uncertainty and, not knowing day to day, that's stressful. It really is.
Yeah. So Mel, during COVID, during the shutdown, what did you do? What were you able to do?
Not a lot. It had to be virtual. They shut me down from home visits. So if you know me, I'll go do a home visit in a minute. But they told us we couldn't do home visits. So a lot of my work was doing Zoom meetings, individual Zoom meetings with kids. We had a little connection circle, eat and learn every day that the kids can come and have lunch and we pick a topic and discuss it. Or on some days we let them pick a topic and discuss it amongst themselves, and we were just the facilitators. So we tried to get really engaging with our students still virtually. And actually we had a good turnout. The kids really enjoyed the eat and learn That really had a high participation rate. Wasn't too much really I can do. The resources
Yeah.
that I, supply to my parents, they were shut down, where they can go and apply for food or help with the insurance. Rent or water. Those places were shut down. So it was a
Uh,
really tiring time.
yes, I can imagine. Um, so what did you see with the kids? You mentioned that now that they're back, they're just excited to be back. They seem no worse for wear. But for both of you, the question is, what have you seen when you? So I didn't ask you, Summer, but curious to know how you all managed during COVID and what kinds of things you put in place. And then what do you observe in terms of the kids that you serve? How are they managing, and what difficulties do you see them having through all of this? Either one of
Um,
you can answer.
yeah, sure. You know, of course, the things that we're having to put in place, school doesn't look the same anymore. So it's,
Right.
wear your protective, mask and sanitizing and temperature checks and, at the door. So even things that were simple before, like drop your kid off, come into school, has now become a whole situation, right? Because we want to
Mhm.
ensure and do as much as we can to safeguard. I mean, even parents this year we had to do an outdoor first day of school because the parents can't get into
Mhm.
the building. We're trying to create somewhat of a bubble, So it's
Right.
very different, it's very different. And I think, the kids know it's different. We noticed it mostly last year when at our school, parents had the option to every quarter select whether or not their child would be in the building or at home. And I think there were some children who were so excited to be back. And then when they got back and it was
Mhm.
mask and 6 feet apart and, all of these changes within the
Yeah.
building, yes, they were glad to be at school as opposed to just sitting at home
Yeah.
watching a computer. But there was still a sense of disappointment and frustration. It's still hard because
It
we're
is.
there, but we're not there.
Not
We're not
there. Yeah.
there, so it's hard for them. I think they're making the best of it. They're resilient,
Mhm.
and they're trying their best. And I love how our kids have completely respected and seen everything that their teachers and the school is trying to do. One, to keep them safe, but also to keep them happy and engaged. They notice it and they see it, but it's a tough time for kids too, for
Yeah.
sure.
What do you see kids dealing with, Mel? Or do you see behavioral changes and do you see the stress in the kids manifesting in different ways?
I do see it manifesting in different ways. I want to bounce back on what Summer said about, when the kids did come back in the building. For us, last year we did a B day virtual thing, where kids would come 2 days and then another set would come the next 2 days. And Friday we were off. It was interesting to see how the kids came the first day, and was like, I'm not coming back. Because it had
Hmm.
changed. And they,
Hmm.
they couldn't eat in a caf, and they had to go to their rooms. And it was rough to the point that a lot of my kids were like, I'm just gonna go back home, Miss Williams. I
Not worth
I
it.
can't do this because they couldn't socialize. And that's the biggest thing, the social emotional learning piece that really got lost during COVID. And so I see that now because a lot of our kids don't know how to do conflict resolution. Everything has to be an argument or a fight. So
Mhm.
I see that I'm really going to have to grab a hold and make sure that while they're with me in this time that we work on social and emotional learning and conflict resolution, because those are some of the issues that's pressing the community that we live in right now. So that's what I saw a lot of coming back. And of course, academically, a lot of them were behind, but the social emotional learning piece really hindered a lot of my students.
Yeah, I can definitely feel that. I see a comment from Kieta Walker Parker. She says, we didn't prepare our kids for what the new normal is because I think we hope to go back to how things were. Yeah, I agree. we should at least prepare both parents and children, or at least giving them a few scenarios. Yeah, I mean, but I guess what you both said too was that we're all kind of figuring this out as we go. So,
Right.
how much preparation can we give for our kids as they're coming back? I don't know. Talk a little bit about the things that you all thought about as you prepared to go back this school year, and what kinds of things you put in place. Um, to try to make it as normal as possible. But of course, I know you had to do some things differently. So can you talk a little bit about how you balance those two, maintaining the normal while obviously things are not normal?
I
Yeah,
think for me is
Melanie.
I think for me is engagement. You
Yeah.
got to keep the kids engaged, regardless of what's going on around them. You know, we can make it a pull up your mask all day and issue, but we can, you know, abide by what the rules are as far as mask and the 6 feet. But we also can have fun and we can engage each other as we learn. So engagement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for our context, I'm having to think through not only the safety protocols, which we do in collaboration with our conference office, and as well reviewing CDC guidelines, all of those things to come up with what I would call the technicalities of it all. What has to happen in order for you to enter the building, what, the mask and the distancing. And like Melanie mentioned, our cafeteria is closed, eating in the classroom. And what I really would like people to think about is the impact that has on teachers. Eating in the classroom means when you might have, let's say you even had teacher duty before for lunch, you were at least at lunch with another teacher to talk to for a moment, right? But now teachers are like on duty all the time, them kids, and they don't get as much interaction with other adults throughout the day as well. So, we're thinking about all of those things, but we're also, my staff and I sit down to think about, okay, how can we still build relationship? How can we still build community during this time? How can we bring a sense of togetherness even when we cannot, be as close to one another? I mentioned briefly, we rethought our whole first day of school, but because at our school, first day of school is huge and it's major, and we always like to make it exciting and engaging. But with all the limitations, we really had to process through, well, what does this look like? So we did it outdoors, safely distanced, masked, everything like that. And it was an enjoyable time. Did it look like what we'd done before? Absolutely not. But it still hit the senses and the feeling that we wanted to have as our kids and families were entering the school year. We have displays in our building that talk about masks, but it's about, even though we're masked, we're still together, just little things that we're trying to incorporate to help our students feel welcome and feel comforted throughout this. We're just doing our best. But as has been mentioned multiple times, we're all here for the first time. Even though we had last year, we're still within the first time, in my opinion. Yeah. So we're trying to figure this thing out as best we can. And I'll be honest, I don't know if we're figuring it out right. There have been days where I go home and I say, I feel like we are pushing to normalize things, like to make things as normal as possible in the midst of all this. But I don't know if that's really the right thing to be doing, considering the amount of stress. I don't have the answers, but we're trying. We really are trying.
Yeah.
One thing that my school, we've learned about doing this pandemic is we got our parents involved a lot about what they would see, because as Summer mentioned, schools are shut down now. Walking your kids to school the first day, taking pictures, that's no more. And I don't have kids, but I from in middle school, I still saw, the hurt in parents that they couldn't take those, middle school pictures. It was sad the first day of school because it was different. It was totally different. The kids were so happy to see each other, but that, we had to say, no hugging, social distance. So it was rough, but we heard a lot from our parents, and some of the things that we changed around because of COVID, we're now going to do permanently. Like we do an open house because they couldn't come in, but now we've heard a lot of praise about the drive-through open house, and we have different stations where they can meet teachers and so forth. And the parents are like, we can do this every year. So that's one of the things that we've incorporated that will still continue, after COVID has gone. But our parents have been resilient as well.
I'm so glad you mentioned parents, because that was going to be my next question. I wondered what you all wished parents knew or what parents would do, because I don't know what your experiences have been with parents, but I often hear teachers talk about how they wish parents understood what goes on, inside the school. Typically, you hear from parents when they're not happy about something. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know whether or not you all have been hit with a lot of criticisms over the last year and a half from parents, a lot of pressure to do or not do certain things, and whether, regardless of your response to that question, what would you want parents to know as we are all sort of going through this together?
Oh man, for me, our parents, I will say, at our school have been very supportive. They've been pleased with our communication as it relates to the pandemic and have been working with us. So, but the biggest thing that I would want parents to know, you've heard a lot in the news and just people talking about this thing called learning loss. I want parents to know that if your kid is showing up and they're attempting and they're trying, I believe in high expectations, so I don't want this to be miscommunicated. But I think we have to be, we need to flex a little bit on helping our kids to understand that they are going through something too. I think sometimes we kind of like pretend that, okay, we have this thing set up, they'll be okay, they'll be fine, and I'm sure they will. But just acknowledging, like, if they did not get an A this quarter, it is okay. We are all making it. We are all making it. And I think sometimes, there was a desire, which I get, it's natural, because report cards still come out, and you want your kid to do well. And then I think even as a faculty, we sat there and we almost got to the question of, like, what are grades? Like, what are grades? What does this even mean? What are we doing? You begin to, I will say that the pandemic has been great in that. It has made us look at what we have always done and say, like, what is actually necessary and what isn't necessary. We went to school 4 days a week last year, and our kids grew, and were virtual and in and hybrid and all this, and our kids grew just as much as they would have in any other year. So the question, the challenge that I have for parents sometimes is, we have in this culture gotten so married to these letter grades and percentages, and then there's pressure on everybody. But I think over the last few years, I want to just say, let's just let learning happen. You can keep your child responsible, but during this time, I think it's really difficult to say, I only want A's coming home when they've been on Zoom for 8 hours. I mean, that's just a lot.
Right.
So I think that's my biggest communication to parents is, you can still have high expectations for your children, but we can let up a little bit.
Yeah, I feel that. Mel, anything that you would, you mentioned parents, but is there anything that you think that maybe parents don't understand about what you and your colleagues are doing that you wish they did?
Yeah, I'm going to still bounce back on the last question, the first question about how did our parents react?
Oh, yes.
I guess it's different in the public sector, because the parents here sued the school system about the kids not being in school.
Oh, wow.
So it was much different. I experienced something much different than what private schools may have, because our parents were, well, not our parents, but as a community in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, I would say over half of the parents were truly upset that we were in virtual. And now even still, we have parents that are upset because we're in a mask mandate. So it was crazy, so we have two sides, wear mask and don't wear mask. But what I would want my parents to know, and all parents to know, is that they still need to have a voice, even with COVID and pre-COVID, after COVID, we have to realize that they've been through something too. So we have to listen to them, hear their voice. A lot of kids lost that communication when they wasn't with us. The parents didn't communicate with them. They were there by themselves all day. So that's what I want to make sure is that the parents don't allow their kids to lose their voice during this time, because they have a say. They have feelings, as what's going on, because it has affected them a lot.
When you say them, you want parents to be mindful of how it's affected their children? Is that what you mean?
Yes, parents, I want parents to understand that it has really affected some of the kids to
Yeah.
where, they've contemplated suicide. I don't think people understand not having that social connect, especially if you're living in a hotel or something, that gets down and depressing sometimes. So I want my parents to listen to their kids, especially about their feelings and what's going on.
Yeah. Which is why they need you, Mel. They need that person, that counselor who can get them through all of this. And I know a lot
And
of
I'm
parents
here
aren't.
for the ride. I'm here for the ride.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I was curious when you were talking before about how you all connected during the shutdown. I was wondering if either of you had issues with children in your schools who didn't have access to technology and devices that they could join Zooms on. Did you have to deal with that as well? And if so, how did you deal with that? Those who maybe had um, you know more difficult time accessing resources.
Well, the first couple of days of school, um, we spent delivering Chromebooks. One thing that Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools ensured was that all kids had a Chromebook during virtual. So there were parents that we were able to do drive-through for them to pick up, and those parents that couldn't get there, I was responsible for taking their Chromebooks and leaving it on the front porch so they'll be able to have the access to get online virtually.
Yeah, similarly for us, our school had all of our students were issued Chromebooks, laptops, so that they could access virtually. There was also, even though I'm not sure if any of our families needed it at the time, but we did have an opportunity where if they needed a hotspot, we could connect them with a method of getting a hotspot for internet access. But for the most part, all of our kids had access, and our parents are really good about making sure, for the most part, getting online and things of that nature. It's totally different than when you start talking about, the quality of connection, which has an impact as well. So,
Right.
if you're struggling to hear the teacher every other word, or if the teacher can't hear your answers, so having a laptop and having internet helps a lot, but
Yeah.
more to it, for it to be effective, smooth. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I definitely can understand, because I had that right here in my own house. My daughter was virtual for a year, and it was good and bad. We live in the country, so on rainy days, she was cutting out and getting kicked out of the Zoom, and it was very stressful. And she was one of those students, like you all described, who was anxious to get back, happy to be back. But then each day she'd come home from school, and I'd be like, "How was school?" And she'd be like, "Oh, it was okay." There was that. It was so hard during quarantine, but then when she went back, it wasn't quite what she thought she was going back to. And so what do you do, right? What do you say to your kid when she comes home and like, "Oh, we have to have a 20-minute lunch so we can switch places with the next class. We have to come in and do lunch." And it's just, everything is so stressful, even though they're back. And I'm wondering, for those parents who were, Melanie, so angry about you all not being in person, whether or not I wonder, and this is not something you could really know for sure, or speculate as to whether they anticipated what being in person would be like. Because here now you are back, in the classroom. but I'm sure they're recognizing that just being in the classroom in a post-COVID environment doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be all like it was, before either. It's one of those things where it's not perfect either way, whether
Right.
you're virtual or whether you're in person. I wonder if everyone really understood what we're dealing with here, honestly.
Well, sadly for CMS, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, um, it divided between a racial thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just being honest,
Yeah.
the Caucasian and others, they wanted the kids in school. They didn't care about the mask and the numbers, whereas, our people, no, our kids not going in
Right.
those buildings. So
Right.
it put a barrier up to,
Mm.
this side of town wanted it this way and this side of town. So it brought a lot of diversity. I mean, it brought a
Or
lot of
division.
discord,
Yeah.
division in our school system to where we still have it today. Like I said, it's this big fight now of no, I don't want my kid to wear a mask and, you know, picketing outside of schools and stuff. It's just ridiculous. So,
Wow.
Summer, you be glad you don't have to deal with that part because our
Seriously.
parents are, far left, far right. It's been
Mhm.
interesting to see their
Yeah,
views on the mask mandates.
I'm baffled by that because I'm like, you can't wish it away. You can send them back in the classrooms without masks if you want, but it doesn't mean that COVID isn't going to happen.
Mhm.
And I have a friend who said that the husband was a principal in a school. I don't
Mhm.
remember where, but it was similar to this, what you're describing, where they were like, no, we're not going to do masks. We're not going to do distance, da, da, da. And he came down with COVID. He infected his wife, who came down with COVID. She was
Wow.
pregnant. She went to the hospital, nearly died because she got so sick. And it's all because he worked in a school that
Mhm.
was among those who believed, I guess, that COVID isn't real. And
Mhm.
they nearly lost their lives over it.
Yeah.
And so it's just amazing to me that this has become a political issue. We're talking about life and death, literally.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like, on one hand, we want to believe and wish away the reality, and we think, oh, if we just go back and get into the classroom and go through the
Mhm.
motions of our normal day, that everything will be fine. But clearly, and then as you describe, it's like as if we don't have enough to deal with. Now you got people picketing and rioting because
Yeah.
of
It's
disagreement.
I just want
Oh
the
my,
kids in school.
right.
It's
Like,
been
can we?
interesting. It has really been interesting.
I am
So,
so sure. Wow. So, guys, this has been such an interesting conversation. You all are doing a noble work, and I want you to know that this parent, at least, appreciates the work that you do, and all those who are in the trenches with you. Before we close out, any last words or things that you want to share that you're doing to help your communities get through, and any last words that you want to share with our audience about how they maybe can get through as well.
I think I guess, closing remarks would just be that, um, man, the only way we're going to do this is together. Like, we have to do this together. And doesn't always mean we'll think alike, that we're going to want the same exact things in the immediate moment. But us working together and being compassionate towards one another, as you mentioned, like, difficult decisions are having to be made, and we're shifting and we're moving, and all of these things that is going to take a unified effort, in my opinion, in order for us to continue to move forward in this direction. I think we have to also be considerate of the fact of be considerate of yourself and others, as this is stressful for everybody. And I think as we're doing this, there's different times where, different people are put on the spot, whether it's the teacher, it's the parent, and you're so frustrated. But this is a phrase that I use a lot with my teachers, like thinking about your locus of control. Like, there's only certain things that you yourself can control. You can't control what's going on in anyone's home. The teacher can't control what's going on in your home. We all have our own, you know, area that we can control. But if we're working together, we can actually move through this pretty unified. But if we're spending our time trying to tap into areas that we can't control, it's only going to cause more stress. So that's kind of my theoretical view on it, because I really think in the practical nature, I hate to say it, we are not making it up, but we're just trying to figure it out as we go. And be the fix, and tomorrow is going to look slightly different because we learned more. But in principle, if we can operate based on some principles of unity and togetherness, we can at least make it through some of these tough times together.
Very good
I
point.
agree too. We're in this together. We're not out the woods. It doesn't look like we're going to get out the woods anytime soon. So if we're going to do it, we got to do it together. Me being a social worker, my favorite word, or one of them, is self-care. And that's from the youngest to the oldest. We are living in a stressful environment, and it's okay to acknowledge that you're stressed or you're overwhelmed. But it's also important that we realize that not only ourselves, but our kids need that self-care. If it's turning off the TV and saying, let's go for a drive and get some ice cream. We have to remember that in this world of craziness that's going on, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to center ourselves, because if we're not together, then we can take whatever we have in us out into this world and make it a little bit more chaotic. So self-care is something I want to leave everybody with this week. Do something for yourself. I tell my kids that all the time. When you go home, do something for yourself, even if it's just playing 15 minutes of a video game. Do something for yourself that makes you smile. Because living in this world right now, we can find a lot of things that make us depressed, but there's a lot of things in this world that are good that's going on right now.
I agree. And I actually thought of one other question. I don't know if either of you have an answer. You kind of touched on it already, Mel. We talk about all the difficulties that have come out of COVID, but there's also been some blessings that have come out of COVID, right? And you talk about how things that you all have implemented, parents are like, hey, let's keep this going. I like this. So, maybe we can end on a positive note. What are some things that we have learned from COVID that maybe we will take into our post-COVID life that actually was positive? And I love what you talk about, Summer, with the goal here is for children to learn. And so I don't know necessarily how much grades, that's a whole other conversation, but grades, have been given a lot of, attention. But if, it doesn't necessarily connect to learning. And so I don't know if you wanted to speak on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has been, it's been hard, but when we talk as a faculty at my school, we all sit there and say, what were we doing before? I mean, there's certain things we don't want to continue, right? But there are certain things in teaching and learning that we've gotten so excited about, and ways that we can engage with kids, and things that if somebody had told us we had to do it before, it would be like, ugh. No, way too much more work, or whatever the case may be, or I don't know how to do that, but we have forced ourselves into some things that we will never turn back from. I will say one thing that was such a blessing to us. We're a Christian school, and last year we had more kids decide to be baptized than any other year since I've been there. And that is through a major virtual platform. And our students internalized our mission statement in ways that they had never done before. So, and core values and praising one another, because remember, we were, as Melanie talks about with the social emotional, we were trying to overdo the concept of mission and core values and shouting one another out because we were in a virtual space. Well, in doing that, our kids learned so much more about how to treat one another, about Christ, etc. That we had such amazing outcomes in that area. Even now, when we're in the building, you can tell everything we talked about last year. When I bring it back up, they know it. They've internalized it. So yeah, it's not been all bad. Like, we have learned a lot as professionals and just as school leaders, and things will never give up. So yeah, I think those are just some key things that have been great for us as a school.
Yeah, we've all been had to become more creative for sure because we've had to work around so many different circumstances. Anything
Absolutely.
else, Mel, that you would say has been a benefit of the COVID experience?
No.
No.
No, I wouldn't say that.
You named one already.
I'm just playing because as a social worker, I'm being honest. COVID
Yes, we
limited
know
me.
it's tough.
But
Yeah.
the parents, the drive-through, things like that. It may have seemed minor to others, but it was major to us because at the end of the day, we still want our parents to be engaged.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I'll say is, as we close, is that I definitely attend a lot more meetings now because I can very easily get to them.
Yep.
So if nothing else, I think that will probably continue the Zoom meetings. There's no excuse for being late. You can, wherever you are, you can join in. So
I like the Zoom
anyway.
meetings, staff meetings, but I don't like Zoom meetings with my kids. I'll do a staff
Yeah.
meeting Zoom all day.
Yes. I agree. I agree with you on that one. Well, this has been a great conversation. I want to thank you guys again for being here and for the work that you do, and praying that this year goes as smoothly as it can. I know we have no idea what tomorrow brings, but we'll definitely just take it one day at a time. So I thank all of you for joining us today. Those of you who chimed in, I see you there, Kieta. So happy you were here, and others who may have joined in. Don't forget you can still say hello in the comments. I also wanted to mention another organization. It's called the U.S. Dream Academy, and we'll put the link in the chat. It's usdreamacademy.org. It's an organization that is focused on assisting young people, particularly those who are children of incarcerated parents, with a mentoring program outside of school hours, just as a supplement to the schooling that young people are getting. It's 7 locations across the country that U.S. Dream Academy are located and positioned. And I think that it's another example of the various ways that we can help one another, support our kids, particularly those that we may forget about. Melanie mentioned there's so many children who don't even have a home. They are living in temporary housing, and there are children of incarcerated parents that just don't have a lot of resources and support systems. And so any opportunity that we have to support UNICEF, support US Dream Academy, and think about those who are less fortunate, because the reality is we often get so caught up in the stuff that we're dealing with and the struggles that we're having, and the teacher ain't doing what she's supposed to do for my child. But there are people out there that are in much worse circumstances. And so if you are even halfway making it through this craziness, take a moment and take care of yourself, as Mel said. Be thankful for what God has done. If you're alive and breathing, you have something to be thankful for. And then let's look outward beyond ourselves to how we maybe can be a blessing for others. And I have a feeling if we get in the habit of focusing on others more than ourselves, as Summer said, we will be able to make it through this situation because we can always do it better together. And that leads me to our scripture for today, which is perfect. Summer and I didn't even talk about this, but when she started talking, I knew it was God ordained. Our verse is, "Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others." Romans 12:3-5. Each member belongs to all the others. We are in this together, and we each have a part to play. We each have a role in making this world a better place. Let's make sure we're doing our part. So that's it. We are closing out the Going Back theme for the month of August, and I can't believe it already. We are into September. Next week, we are kicking off a brand new theme, and the operative word there is kicking, because I am super excited to have a whole roster of women who are in the STEM field, and they are kicking down those barriers that keep girls bound. I don't want you to miss it. Make sure you tune in next week. In the meantime, love yourself, love each other. God bless. See you next time.